Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, and welcome to Prog Chattery 777. We've been talking about Jethro Tull, and we've made it. We've made it deep into the 80s now. This is 1982, The Broadsword and the Beast. Right off the bat, probably one of the best Tull album covers ever. I love this album cover. That is a very dramatic image. Still a play off of Ian Anderson's image, but yeah, it's really cool. And we get the flip side. We get the Viking longship, massive Viking longship, quite dramatic. We get a nice little border around here too, with kind of a Tolkien type font. It's quite cool. Yeah, so this is fresh off the heels of A, originally an Ian Anderson solo record, became a Jethro Tull record after record company pressure. Certainly quite an adventurous album, A. That one is where we first get introduced to the synthesizer sounds, which became very predominant during the early 80s. And certainly one of the more controversial eras of Jethro Tull, that synthy stuff. And obviously, you know, the criticism is, you know, it doesn't really sound like quintessential Tull. You know, the synthesizers, you know, obviously they're quite dated. A lot of the tones that are used are a product of their time. But I think this is a very underrated era of Tull. I think this album in particular, I mean, of the 80s period, so let's say the albums A, this one, Walk Into Light, the solo album, and Under Wraps. This one probably gets the most praise. I think this is generally regarded as the best effort from the synthy stuff. I don't necessarily agree with that, but it is a very good record. But yeah, what I was saying about the 80s period in general is I think even though we've got those dated sounds, it's a great example of Ian Anderson's songwriting. I mean, he was this is a particularly good period for his writing, and he's you know, he's on fire creatively because he's got all these new toys to play with, and lyrically we see a few new directions, and the next couple of albums after this are very daring. But anyway, yeah, we're talking about The Broadsword and the Beast. Like I said, this is just after the solo record turned Tull record A, and I think there may have been a bit of a public relations crisis because I think A jarred a lot of the fans because, you know, it doesn't really sound anything like Jethro Tull. We got, you know, there's barely any acoustic on the album. A little bit of acoustic stuff, but, you know, for the most part it's very not Tull-like. This album, I think, is an effort to re-engage with their fan base. So it's got a bit of a commercial edge to it. You know, they're deliberately trying to sound like classic Tull, but with the addition of the synthesizers. It is a very synth-heavy album. But you know, the melodies and you know, the arrangements, some of the lyrical content sort of has that you know, classic Tull period. And, you know, like I said, it's got a great production on it. I think it sounds really good. I mean, it sounds as it's of the 80s, but I think it's got a better production than a lot of the other Tull albums. You know, it is a very well produced, well arranged, well executed set of songs. My only criticism is that it might be a little bit contrived. You know, it's that thing where, you know, if you take the classic folk trilogy, for example, you know, Songs from the Wood through to Stormwatch, including Heavy Horses, you know, the band wasn't trying to sound like anything. They were just doing what they were doing. You know, they were doing you know, they were doing great work just because that's where Ian Anderson was as a songwriter. When they consciously try and recreate something from the past, you know, there is that kind of, you know, I like albums where I like forward-looking albums generally, but ultimately this is a great set of songs. The lineup is a little bit different from A. Eddie Jobson, he was only set to be there for that album and tour, so he was gone. Mark Craney, who was on drums for A, he left as well. But Martin Barre, he stayed on doing his wonderful electric guitar playing, and Dave Pegg had been on board since the Stormwatch tour and became the longest-serving bass player of Tull. I think I forgot to mention that. He stuck in there for quite a long while. And on drums, replacing Mark Craney, we've got Jerry Conway. Again, a little bit simplistic on the drumming, but that's okay. I'm not against simple things. I do miss Barry Barlow's influence on this album, though. I mean, he was such a great drummer, very busy drummer, but I liked that. It was a tall thing. But he pulls it together quite nicely, Mr. Conway. And on the synthesizers and piano, we have a very important member, a key member, Peter John Vitesi. Um, and yeah, I think his presence is certainly felt on this album. Like I said, there's a lot of synths on it, but his real influence on Ian Anderson's writing and his influence on the period in general is yet to be fully realized. This is still his introduction. Um, so yeah, that's the lineup. We've got the idea. We're gonna mix the classic Tull with the modern synth, and let's talk about the tracks, shall we? The first side is called the Beastie side. It opens with Beastie. I quite like this song actually. Again, you could criticize, it's a bit simple. There's that commercial edge to it, but I think it's really really good. There's a great hook in the verse that comes in when just the way that the vocal melody wraps around. Keeps you hooked into the song, and it's got nice. It's a steady rocking drum beat. I really like the intro too. We get that synth stuff at the very beginning. That builds up, and yeah, I said it's a pretty solid song. His voice is very good on this album too. I think Anderson, along with having a fruitful period in his songwriting, he was also, I think, getting more interested in singing. And like I always liked the older stuff, where he's got so much character and he's just using his voice in such an animated way. Here in this period, he's legitimately trying to become, a singer, which is great. Track 2, Clasp. This has always been one of my favorites of the album, actually. We get a really, really nice atmospheric intro, again, loaded with synths, but, the flute line, when that flute line comes in, it is kind of, that's an example of that quintessential Tull sound. Really cool, and there's some really cool, I'm not sure if they're toms or some kind of drum. I don't think it'd be an electronic drum, but some cool drum sounds on there. It might just be toms with towels on them. Yeah, and I've always really liked Clasp. It might be my favorite on the album. Could be. Like I said, and then there's an atmospheric bridge to it as well. I think quite nice. Then we get Fallen on Hard Times. This is not quite as strong as the first two songs, but again, it's got a good hook to it. It's every time I listen to the album, I end up saying, yeah, that's a solid song. But I mean, it might not even be the production; it's just the arrangement of it. There's some certain guitar lines that pop up on Fallen on Hard Times. It really just screams 80s-ness, and it has nothing to do. Maybe it has something to do with tone, but it's just the way the lines executed. I think, just how guitar players, what they were into at the time. But yeah, it's not a bad song. Slower tempo than the first two. Well, about as slow as Beastie, but not as menacing. Track 4 of the first side is Flying Colors. Again, on the whole, the main part of the song may have that 80s-ness to it, 80s guitar rock vibe. But the intro, I think, is really, really nice. I love the piano intro. That's a great introduction to Peter Vitesi's playing. I mean, he's always known for all the technology that he was using and all the synth sounds that he was using, but he was a fantastic player. I think, I love John Evan, and I think he put some great contributions to early Tull, for By Kind Permission Of and all that. Even bits on Dark Age, or not Dark Ages, Flying Dutchman on Stormwatch. John Evans, very, very good pianist, but Peter Vitesi has got some serious chops, for sure. And the intro to Flying Colors is a good example of that. That first verse, quite nice. Then the first side wraps up with Slow Marching Band. This is the ballad. You got the ballad of the album, really. And it's nice, slow tempo. it kind of it does have that folky melody, you know. I guess it has some of that kind of Celtic influence. I'll have to hear it again. Um, but it's nice. I mean, after we get Falling on Hard Times and Flying Colors, we really get, you know, a lot of that 80s guitar rock kind of sound. So Slow Marching Band is a nice way to close the album, and it reminds us we are still listening to Tull and Ian Anderson. So that's good. We flip the album over and we get the Broadsword side 2, which opens appropriately with Broadsword. I think a lot of people really like this song, but you know, I liked it when I was a kid, but I kind of I've grown a little out of it. I feel the Broadsword song, that track actually is probably the most guilty of sounding a little bit contrived, where they're trying too hard to make it sound like Jethro Tull. But you know, it is what it is. It's on the album. You can't like every song on the album. So that's probably, that for me might be the weak moment. Things pick up though with Pussy Willow. I could say that it's got that generic 80s thing, but it's not as pronounced as other parts on the album. I think Pussy Willow is actually a really good, a great song actually. And we get some of those acoustic flavorings in the verses. I like the subdued verses. They're quite nice. It's a great example of blending, you know, the acoustic now with, you know, the synthesizer kind of stuff, and you know, some of that 80s guitar stuff as well. But yeah, Pussy Willow is probably one of the highlights of the album. There's some of that hilarious classic Ian Anderson wordplay going on there as well. He is a witty fellow, Mr. Anderson. He's yeah, that's just that's the thing with his writing in general. I mean, he presents his lyrics and his writing in such a, you know, the melodies are so great and the lyrics are generally so you know, witty but serious at the same time. But I'm getting off topic. I'm going to stop myself. Track 3 of the second side is Watching Me, Watching You. People might call me crazy, but I think this is the best song on the album. I love Watching Me, Watching You. This is a really good song. Probably the most heavy on the synths, but you know, I think that's why I like it. I mean, I really like the you know, the adventurousness of it. You know, they're really looking for, they are still looking for something new and fresh, and they're, you know, exploiting, you know, the technology of the day, and I think to great effect. We still get that kind of, you know, there is a classic Tull melody hidden in all those, you know, all those thick synth lines that are all kind of jumbled together. We still get some of that quintessential Tull melody. Da 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 da. You know, it's still there. But yeah, I just love that. I love the dense synthesizers that you know, kind of sit underneath the whole piece. And it was a great vocal performance by Anderson as well. I love that chorus. I love that, you know, that hook of "He's watching me, watching the trains go by." He did have that train obsession too. Another song involving trains. First one that I can think of immediately is Journeyman from Heavy Horses. But yeah, great stuff. And live, that was really good too. There's footage live you can look up, where we see the strobe lights that they used. It's, you know, it's an old school effect these days, but it used to great effect. And there's another one of those neat little arrangements. At the last chorus, when there's a repeat, we get that big burst of flute, and then great song, best on the album for me personally. Then we get to track 4 of side 2, and this might be the closest thing to the epic that we get on the album, Seal Driver. You know, I hesitate now to call it an epic. You know, it's nothing like Dark Ages or Cap in Hand or anything like that. It's, you know, again, probably guilty of having the, you know, that heavy 80s guitar sound at times. But there's a few, you know, dramatic changes that come up. There's a nice sneaky bass line, and that kind of hits off, you know, it sends the song off at the end. But I mean, the chorus and whatnot is quite dramatic, and you know, I think it is an appropriate kind of, you know, last blast of the album. So it's okay. Not my favorite, but it's okay. And of course, it's not the last song on the album because we get one of those classic little songettes at the very end. We get Cheerio. I really like this song. Probably it might be the most well-known song on the album. I know he's played it before. You know, and it's a great way to end the concert too. You know, it's about like a minute and 11 seconds or something. And you know, it is quintessential Tull, and it feels a little less contrived though, because it's been a while since we've had those songettes. You know, it's you know, the folk trilogy has got, you know, whole sets of fully arranged songs. You know, it had been quite a while. And Cheerio, it's kind of similar to Grace from Minstrel in the Gallery as well. I think Grace is probably the better of the two, but Cheerio is great. Lovely closer. Lovely way to cap the album off. Kind of has that maritime-y feel to it at the end. Lovely stuff. So there it is, Broadsword and the Beast. Hope I haven't been too long rambling on about it. I've been looking forward to talking about the 80s albums because I feel they aren't talked about enough, to be honest. So yeah, we're going even deeper into the synth period with the next video. It's going to be Ian Anderson's first solo album, Walk Into Light. Is there something else I was going to say about this? I can't remember. Was there? Tell me quick. Tell me in the comments below. What else was I going to say about this? Oh, it's gone. So, yeah, I will leave you at that. Stay tuned for the next video. It's going to be Ian Anderson's first solo album, Walk Into Light. We'll see you then. Thanks.